Welcome to Through the Corporate Glass, a podcast that explores career choices. We dive into the latest trends in tech careers, demystify industry roles, spotlight startups, and even explore unconventional paths outside the industry. Join us for authentic conversations that will challenge your assumptions and inspire you to think differently.
I am Deepa, your host for today's episode. Today's episode is going to be a primer on consulting. We are going to talk about who is a consultant, what they do, the skills that you need, and why do companies hire them. To talk about this, I have with me Dilip. Dilip Adiga is a senior manager at Deloitte. He began his career as an engineer but later lost his heart to consulting, his true passion. Welcome to the show, Dilip.
Hey, thanks, Deepa. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. So let's dive right in. So, what is consulting? How do you define consulting?
That's an interesting question, and like one of those obvious questions that people ask. And it's not easy to answer, Deepa. And the reason for that is consulting is so wide. There is like no single product, there's no single technology or solutioning that you do. The term consulting, can be used to define variety of things, and to a large extent, basically it means helping out people, helping out organization achieve their strategic objectives. So in its true sense, there are various types of consulting, right? There's strategy consulting, which is where predominantly I spend most of my time. Then there's marketing consulting, operations, technology consulting, HR consulting, and so on. So depending on the area that you are interested in and you work in, you can define consulting in many ways.
I can see that. So, uh, let's make it a little simple. Why don't you walk us through a small example of a problem that a consultant would solve and what it would look like?
Sure. I mean, I can quote an example that I'm just currently working on. There is this firm that wants to modernize their entire portfolio. They wanted to make sure they adopt technologies like cloud and so on. So they came to us saying, hey, can you build us a strategy? Like this is more like 2024 strategy, right? It's not a 6 month or a year long. This is like next 4 years. Can you help build a strategy where our business can be modernized in such a way that they are agile, they are they travel with the speed or agility that you would need, and their end clients would expect. So it involves quite a few things. It involves like things like, can you look at their current portfolio and see, does it meet their current or future client requirements? Does it have a lot of legacy or technical debt? What would be the financial implications of undertaking some journey like this? It's like building an entire business case associated with a strategy like this, and of course then build a roadmap and make sure people who are associated with this agree to the plan and so on. So you can imagine there is going to be a lot of socialization associated with something as big plan as like this. So that's one of the problems we are solving, and of course you will end up then go execute on those plans. So that's just an example of the mini project that I usually be part of from a strategy standpoint.
Those are, I know, tough but interesting problems to solve, Dilip. Is- Now, just tell me one thing. In my role, I work a lot with technology consultants. That's the exposure I have.
Hmm.
Now, if you look at your journey, like you come in, there is a customer who comes to you with a problem. Then you do your extensive research analysis, recommend, like in this case, what should be their strategy for 2024. Then what happens? Do the customers just say, okay, thank you for the advice, and then they take it and they go on and either maybe follow your plan or do something else? So what happens after that?
So and it's a very interesting question. And if I have to go back a few years, right, I would say there was definitely a lag between a strategy and an implementation phase. In a sense, we used to come in like build the entire strategy on how to solve a particular problem, but then we don't hear back from the customer for almost a year because they're still figuring out whether to do it or not, and so on and so forth. But that was few years back. In the last couple of years, people don't just do strategy for the heck of doing strategy. So you actually end up implementing that plan. That also comes into question, like if someone like us comes and says, hey, can you, if you do this, you're going to save 30% of your cost, then the obvious question is, from their side, is can you do it? So we go ahead and actually go implement for the customer, for the client. So there are both sides of the story, and sometimes we also help them choose the right vendors to do it if we are not the right vendor, and so on. So it can take multiple paths, and it could even be done in house, right? If we get enough buy-in and client wants to implement it in house, we also enable that too through our suggestions, to our recommendations, and ultimately clients can execute that themselves. So there are multiple flavors of the next steps, the way you asked it.
Right, right. There is this always this feeling, like I was like, I am jealous of a consultant. They get to do all the cool stuff and then go. But looks like now you're
there is
staying
pros
longer.
and no, there is pros and cons to everything. So I am sure I have enough things to talk about on that story, but that's for another time.
Right, right. So with all this, I know, how does a typical day look like? I mean, like, is it like regular folks, or what do you do? Like, you go to office, and what does Dilip do?
I mean, these days I'm not going to office due to COVID, right? It doesn't matter. Like everyone else, we are all at home, and that's the interesting twist to the story from a consultant's life, right? I mean, typically we used to do Monday to Thursday, Friday being more for internal initiatives and internal catch up. But these days, all 5 days is predominantly spent on client work, and a typical day is a bit of a trick question because we start pretty early in the day and we end pretty late in the night. So, and the reason for that is multiple fronts. There is a reason why clients ask a consultant to come help them, is because they know you can get things done. They know that you have enough experience from an industry standpoint, or you'll have enough people who have that experience and you will tap into it. So so all that means you are spending a lot of time trying to solve that particular problem, and you're actually doing a lot of industry research, you're doing a lot of technical research, you're doing a lot of socialization with the clients and with SMEs to get things done, and so on. So ultimately you're spending a lot of offline work to develop that strategy, to develop that plan, and so on. So you end up doing a lot of meetings. And like, imagine if you're developing a 10 pager deck for a CEO, and this is to help him understand what the strategy, what it looks like, what's the ROI, and so on. That 10 pages would take us about 3 months to build, and it will at least have a few hundred iterations in terms of the actual material by the time the CEO sees that deck. So, and that's our work, right? So there's a joke that unless we hit version 100, version 200, we will not show the deck to the client type. So there are multiple reasons why we spend so much time, and it's extremely important. It's not just the CEO, right? The CEO directs his team. Everyone should agree to that strategy, and all of that socialization has to be done before you actually talk to the CEO and show him the strategy, to say the least. So typical day would involve a lot of meetings, would involve a lot of research, would involve a lot of socialization, talking, and so on. So it's pretty exciting. That's a different story.
Yeah, I can get that. I know you have to present to CEOs, but you also have to prepare so much, and also with all the meetings, so the days could be really long. I can see that happening. So one question that I had was, do you travel a lot? I mean, is traveling a part of your, what you say, routine? Now I know it's
Yeah, it
COVID.
used to be, not now anymore. I mean, like I said, COVID has kind of put a stop on everything, right? And it's an interesting phase for consultants. In fact, our firm is making a conscious effort to see if we really have to travel, considering now we are forced to experiment this, right?
Hmm.
So we are actually going in a direction where we are asking ourselves, as consultant, do we really need to travel as much as we used to? And it also brings in the social responsibility piece of it, right? The green, the
Hmm.
sustainability piece, and all of that, with all the miles that one would incur. So there are perks to it, but that also means you're spending so much fuel on travel. So Yeah, I mean, right now I don't think at least till next summer we'll probably not be traveling much. But post that, I do feel like there's probably going to be much less than what it used to be.
Right, I can see that. So, what are the key skills you think one needs to be a consultant?
Yeah, I mean, key skills is like you should be okay with change. You should be okay with learning new things on every new project. Because I mean, the whole point of a consultant is you need to be nimble and flexible, right? That means you should be able to hop from one project to another pretty easily and ramp up pretty easily. That also means that you need to be okay with such an attitude. If you're a kind of person who likes stability, who, in a sense of knowing what you're doing in the next 3 months, 6 months, or a year, and knowing the technology you'll be working on, knowing the space you'll be working on, then potentially, yes, then potentially a consultant life is probably not the right thing. But if you are a person who is analytically inclined, who wants to solve problems, doesn't matter what those problems are, and can work on Excel and so on and so forth, then yeah, then that being a consultant is probably the right thing for you. So the key notion here is to be a little nimble
Mm.
and be flexible in the work that you will be doing, and that would really help and go a long way to actually be successful as a consultant.
Right. Is having an MBA a must?
I mean, I'll be honest. I have an MBA, so I'll say it's really really helpful, but it's not really a must. There are a lot of successful consultants out there who don't have an MBA. But having said that, it really helped me to get exposure to things I wouldn't have got exposed to, before joining my firm. So definitely, I would say it's pretty helpful. It also helps in multiple other fashion, like not just the breadth that you would need to be successful as a consultant, but also the social skills, the skill to actually achieve anything that you think you can. Like, we used to get assignments in our B school, saying, this the submission is like, 2 a.m., on the same night. So we used to slog our ass off to, build whatever is needed and submit. I mean, at that time, I would say that I used to be proud of the quality, but now if I look back, I would say probably not. But those are kind of skills that you would need, and it goes a long way. Like, I was definitely not extrovert in any grand scheme until I joined like my B school or MBA, and then joined consulting world. I've now gone probably more right in terms of in terms of those skills. So all of those comes in handy when you think about actually whether to do an MBA or not. I would say it's pretty helpful. But there are a lot of people who are successful without actually doing it.
Yeah, I can clearly see that it does help, and it also prepares you for the life style ahead, I
Oh
guess,
yeah.
with all the action.
Yep.
So I know we are right at the end, but while wrapping off, what is, say, someone comes and tells you that I want to be a consultant, what would you tell them?
I would say no, that's awesome, right? I mean, obviously, I am being one. I'll say, welcome, join the club, but there are a couple of things I would definitely look at. One is, to figure out the area. Like right in the beginning, Deepa, we were talking about how there are so many types of consulting world or consulting space, right? The first thing, so you need to decide, in which area or in which space you want to become a consultant. Second is to be okay with, having the breadth and not really go deep at all the time, especially in the beginning of your career, because later you can probably specialize, but at least, you need to be nimble and try and learn as quickly as possible. And third is you should be ready to work hard, and that comes in as part of the package, because the very fact that you're switching projects, very fact that you probably might be switching areas, domain, and the problem that you're trying to solve for your client shows that you probably have to have that ability to ramp up, to put that hard work, and to get that successful, right? And unless you are successful, the client is not going to come back and ask for the next engagement. So I would say those are some of the key things that you would want to consider as a consultant.
That's a good summary. And do consultants always tell things in threes?
They do, and this is a trick that I learned after joining a firm. I mean, my first consulting project, Deepa, was trying to solve. When I did my B school, I did a project on the side where I had to solve for a distribution problem. And when I presented the final analysis to the founder of the startup at that point of time, I had a 3-page executive summary. And the first thing I learned is, when I joined like the firm that I'm working for, they said, one, it has to be crisp. Second, it has to be in threes. So, and three, not in terms of 3-page of executive summary, it's 3 bullets type. So, and there's a bit of science behind, odd numbers. Apparently, it's either has to be 1, 3, or 5 types. So, yeah, that's a bit of a nuance that consultants typically follow.
That's good to know, and maybe we will deep dive into all of this in another conversation.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I'm happy to be part of this journey here with you guys. Thanks for hosting me.
Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thanks. Yeah, take care. Cheers.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube or on any podcast platform. Follow us on LinkedIn at Through the Corporate Glass. You can leave us a comment on YouTube or send us feedback via our website, throughthecorporateglass.com. We would love to hear your feedback.